I'm joined now by Mark Brownstein with the Environmental Defence Fund. Now, Mark, you're probably keeping a closer eye on what's going on and what all of the big energy companies are doing. But I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about COP26 and really when we look at the outcomes of it and perhaps what it means really for the energy sector and all of the players here.
Well, I think COP26 is really a watershed moment. We now, for the first time, methane is firmly on the agenda. And of course, the oil and gas industry is a major source of methane pollution. This drives a quarter of the warming that our planet's experiencing right now. And so the oil and gas industry really has both an opportunity and a responsibility to slow warming in the near term. So that's one big aspect of COP26 that I think is worth focusing on.
Now, we're hearing a lot of talk, obviously, about the energy transition, and everybody, they're on the journey, they know it's happening. I think it's been very, very pragmatic in terms of, admitting and being accountable. I think we're hearing a lot more. But, where are we on the energy transition? I mean, is it going to be a long, bumpy road? It's already been a bit of a long, bumpy road, but where to from here?
Well, many people feel, including myself, that we're not moving fast enough. The science of climate change has been apparent for a long time. We're very glad now that the oil and gas industry is realizing that we need to make some significant changes and is beginning to step up to the challenge. We've seen some very good commitments to net zero, particularly here in the UAE, for example, with ADNOC. But we need more of that from a wider range of players in the industry. But as important, we also need action, right? Words are great, action is what's needed.
Are you encouraged, though, when you look at the oil and gas industry and, conferences, I've been covering them for many, many years and you've been attending yourself, but the narrative has shifted completely. I mean, it's night and day compared to probably even 5 years ago.
Well, I was here at ADIPEC 2 years ago. And even then, you could walk around the hall and you see that people were really questioning whether climate change was real and whether they had to do something about it. Here we are 2 years later, and right on the main stage, right in the plenary, from the get-go, we're talking about climate, we're talking about energy transition, we're talking about net zero and zero carbon. And in fact, when you walk around the hall here, you see a number of companies that are beginning to offer solutions to the industry. So there's been a radical change, I think, in just 2 years.
When we look at particularly, methane reduction and capture and just the awareness, I mean, this is something that people are, excited about because we can do something about it. And I think the International Energy Forum has also taken this on board. What big a difference will it make? Because it was something that really hasn't been in the headlines for a long time.
Well, again, if you take something like methane emissions or methane, depending on where you come from, you're talking about a pollutant that drives a quarter of the warming our planet is experiencing right now. So when we think about the floods, when we think about the wildfires, when we think about the storms that, just about everyone around the world has been experiencing, we can see that action that the oil and gas industry takes to reduce emissions can have a material impact on slowing those kinds of disasters in our lifetime. It's a pretty powerful opportunity.
It is indeed. And I think it's also a business opportunity. I mean, so I think when people, see the facts and figures, it makes even more sense for everybody. Talk to me a little bit about, the sort of peer pressure in the world and consumers who are more aware. And I think also people who are fed up, they've really made their voice very loud and clear. And I think there's been a lot of attention paid and people are listening. So, where do we go from here now that I think the message has been delivered, it has been accepted, and I think the response has been, we're ready, willing to do something. And I hear a lot of talk that people are saying, we want to be part of the solution, we can be, and we will be.
Well, you heard very loud and clear from the next generation that they're tired of, blah, blah, blah. And I think that there's real truth to that. Right? The kids today are inheriting a world that is fundamentally challenged by climate change. And they're concerned because they haven't seen those of us in positions of leadership and in power do enough. And so, again, I think it's terrific that everyone at this conference is talking about their commitment to getting to net zero. But I think what's really going to make the difference is when people start to see tangible action, when they start to see the investments, when they start to see the technology being deployed, and they start to see the business model shift. And that has to happen soon.
And when we think about investments, I mean, at the moment, we need almost a dual investment strategy. We have to keep the lights on, and yes, we have to decarbonize. while at the same time investing in a greener future. That message sometimes doesn't seem to be, held loud and clear because we are in a transition, and I think that is really the key thing at the moment. So in the sense that, where are we going to find all the investment? And we need to keep both going for the time being, together. What do you think?
Well, many people at this conference talk to me about the cost of doing this, and they question, are people ready to pay the additional cost for the greener energy? And yes, there will be additional costs for greener energy, but we have to keep in mind that there are huge costs to not doing anything. Right, the economic cost of wildfires, the economic cost of floods, the economic cost of storms. I mean, that's real impact to our societies. To say nothing of the human dimension to this, the suffering and what it does to the social fabric. So yes, will we be paying a little more for energy in the future? Yes, we will. Will we be getting tremendous benefits? Will we be avoiding higher costs in the form of disaster? Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind.
And sadly, sometimes I think people don't really understand that because it doesn't impact them right away. And sadly, when it does, then they all kick into action. Talk to me a little bit about, fuels for the future and what will drive the future. We're hearing a lot at this conference about hydrogen and about the new hydrogen future that, everybody looks towards, and seemingly it looks like the direction.
Well, first of all, one of the other things that we saw at the COP was the number of industries coming forward, the auto industry, the trucking industry, making commitments to electrify. So clearly we're moving in a direction where road transportation is going to be increasingly electric, both passenger cars and trucks. It becomes much harder, though, when you're talking about ships and airplanes. And there, alternative fuels, hydrogen-based fuels certainly can play a role. But there's a lot of work to be done to understand, first of all, where is that hydrogen going to come from? Let's make sure that it's coming from green sources on the first instance. And number two, let's also make sure that that hydrogen stays in the pipe, stays in the tank, because hydrogen itself in the atmosphere can cause climate problems if we're not doing this right.
So we don't want to solve one problem and create another, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, it's great to see you back at ADIPEC and again, engaging with people here. For you, what have been the highlights of ADIPEC, and how important is it, and I think coming after a COP as well, how important is this conference now? And we look at even, I think, the years ahead, it might even be more important, or strategically, it'll be more important in the region.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about ADIPEC is the fact that this is really the biggest gathering of the oil and gas industry, I think, anywhere in the world. And what's particularly notable is the number of national oil companies that are here. I don't think many people realize just the role that national oil companies play in delivering energy around the world. And so to have those national oil companies come together in a forum like this, to be able to have the opportunity to speak with them and to exchange ideas and hopefully convince them to move quicker, right? That is a huge opportunity for us, and it's one of the unique value propositions, I think, of ADIPEC.
And we're looking forward to COP27 and COP28. So a bit of a focus on this region, and the world will be looking around here for the next couple of years. So again, how strategically important is that? And it's interesting. I mean, what do you think about that? Because the eyes of the world will suddenly be focused here.
Well, both Egypt and the UAE are, very central to the world's energy economy. And so, as we go forward in these next two COPs, energy, I think, will be at the forefront. But I don't think that the oil and gas industry can take for granted the fact that simply because the COP is going to be held in these two key countries, that they're going to be welcomed with open arms. So I think the challenge for the oil and gas industry in the next two COPs is really demonstrate that they have a role to play and demonstrate that they really are committed to energy transition and that they're ready, willing, and able to bring solutions to the table and not just talk about it, but show real progress.